Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to do a special Cancer season question and answer session. I hope that you're doing well out there, my friends, that you're having a relaxing entrance into your weekend. We'll spend an hour or two here together talking astrology, talking gardening, talking symbolism, mythology, anything that floats your boat. If you have questions about the tarot, fixed stars, etc., I'd be happy to explore that with you here today. So if you are joining us, make sure you leave a comment here in the chat. Tell me where you're stopping in from. Let me know that you're here. If you're lurking, don't be shy today. If you have a question, put question in all caps, and that'll help me to see that you have something that you're wanting to talk about. So I've got a few friends stopping in here. Just want to welcome all of you as you're stopping in. KP1231 says, hi, Spencer, and also glad to catch you live from home instead of work this weekend. Yeah, I hope everyone's having a good vacation. If you're lucky enough to have this day off, it's I'm honored that you're spending it with me. For those of you who didn't know, it's my birthday weekend. It's my birthday on Sunday, July the 7th. So sometimes I take these live streams as like a little hangout celebration for my birthday too. I always like kind of interacting with all of you on that time period. So thank you, KP, for being here today from Cleveland, Ohio. Sacred Space is here hanging out. What's up, Sacred Space? Nice to see you. Love the little butterfly icon and the Cancer love that you're putting out there. So welcome, and I hope that you're doing well. It says happy birthday to a new year. Thank you, my friend. Yeah, we're going to be having a pretty low-key birthday, I think. I'm going to be 44 this year. So I'll say that under my breath. But it's always interesting to see what the new solar return chart has in store for us. If you're not familiar with that technique, every single year at your birthday, you have what's called solar return, where the sun returns to the exact position it was at your birth. Sometimes it's at the day of your birth. Sometimes it's a little bit before or after. And the chart that you're looking at with the solar return at that moment can give you kind of some insight into the chart of what you're going to be experiencing moving forward throughout the year. So that's something I help clients with when I do Kairos readings and when I look at 3 months ahead and when people are looking at, planning out their year. Mine is interesting this year. I'm going to be moving into a 9th house perfection year with Mars ruling the 9th house. And so Mars is going to be what's called my Time Lord. And Mars is in a little bit of a funky position. So we'll see how it all turns out with Mars coming together with Uranus pretty soon here. But we'll talk about that today. We'll talk about some of the astrology that's coming down the pike in the next week or two. We are, of course, right now at the end of a balsamic moon phase, getting ready for the new moon in Cancer this evening. So that's exciting too. So we're kind of tying up all those loose ends. So yeah. And thank you, KP, for the birthday wishes. Appreciate you, friend. Okay. And KPFC, I have a question coming up here, and I will get to that one in a second. But first, we are going to have a few announcements before we dive into it. So if you are new here, welcome. My name is Spencer, and I'm your friendly neighborhood astrologer. And in addition to these weekly live streams that I do each week, roughly around 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Fridays, I'm also a professional astrologer, and I love working with you in that capacity. So we have readings available at my website, spencermichaud.com, on the Book Now button, where you can look into the mythic narrative of your life through the eyes of your chart. We can look at what is coming up for you with transit readings, which is called Kairos in my offerings. If you have just one question, you can schedule an oracle reading. That is a short and sweet one where we can kind of get to the heart of one particular issue. And I also do astrological tutoring, so check out all that at spencermichaud.com. I'm also having a Cancer season sale right now. I do a webinar series called The Decans of Whatever, in this case, The Decans of Cancer. And I'm going to be showing you some slides from that today if we're diving into Cancerian archetypes. And it's 20% off right now. They're 2.5 to 3 hour webinars. You can find that in the store icon in my website, spencermichaud.com, so check that out. And of course, I have a lovely magical partner named Tanya Andrews, who has a business called Third Coast Mojo, and she has a number of wonderfully magically elected oils and products based on the energies drawn down from the power of the planets and the stars. So she has some really awesome stuff. You could see here we've got the magical money soap. If you're worried about things like that, maybe the stars can give you a little bit of boost. This money soap was made with Jupiter in Sagittarius energy, which is very lucky, very fortunate. So check it out on her website, Third Coast Mojo. And of course, today, if you are so inclined and you want to support the channel or you want to buy me a book for my birthday or something, you can buy a super chat with a little $sign in the YouTube live stream today. That's called a super chat or a super sticker. You can also go to buy me a coffee or buy me a book. I guess what it's the website is buy me a coffee, but since I don't drink coffee, I usually use those resources to further my education. You can find that buymeacoffee.com. And yeah, it's a great way to support the channel, help me keep the lights on here, help me to continue to do the research. And you're really buying me the gift of time so that I can do this research and bring it to you via the airwaves. So thank you so much for your support. Okay, so we've got some more people stopping in here. I'd like to welcome some of you. Steven, what's up, Steven the Jupiterian? Says hello, happy birthday. Yay, thank you, Steven. Made it to another live. Nice to see you here. Robin is joining us. Says Robin from the North Bay area. It's still dealing with a major heat wave in North Cali. Yeah, lots of weather events happening. We'll talk about that today too, and maybe how to be best prepared and to find resiliency within that, especially with Mars and Uranus coming together in Taurus. Lisa's joining us from sunny Vancouver. Nice to see you, Lisa. Hope you're doing well. Sergey is back. What's up, Sergey? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well in your neck of the woods also. And yeah, Steven says San Francisco here. It is hot. I believe it. I have some friends over on the West Coast, and they've been kind of melting right now. It is less hot here for the time being. We've been getting a little reprieve in the Midwest of the United States. I'm here in Michigan. It's about 80 degrees today, but it's very humid. And we were having much hotter weather a few weeks ago, and that weather's probably going to return pretty soon. So I'm just enjoying the little break. But I wish all of you well in the West Coast and the heat wave. Make sure you stay safe, stay hydrated, and don't take the weather for granted. Make sure you prepare the best that you can. Okay, we had a question here from KP. It says, will Venus squaring Chiron tarnish this lunation? That's interesting. So let's bring the new moon chart up to the screen, because we've got the new moon in Cancer that's going to be happening later on today, and we will bring that to the screen so we can kind of see what we're looking at here. So what KP is referring to, hold on a second. So we have the new moon here, 14 degrees of Cancer, and we have Chiron here at 23 degrees of Aries, and it is in a square to the lunation and to Venus. Now, will the square from Chiron tarnish the lunation? That's an interesting question and an interesting way to think about it. I think a lot of times what we see with squares within a lunation, they're just challenges. For the most part, I would say, KP, that this lunation seems fairly free of negativity from my vantage point. It has a sextile with Mars, has a sextile with Saturn. So those are, or trine with Saturn, excuse me. Trine with Saturn, sextile with Mars. So positive aspects, flowing aspects with both malefic planets that can normally, make a lunation more difficult. But what we're referring to today with Chiron is an asteroid. So this is a smaller body that could, be a part of this. I think the Venus-Chiron square is something that I would keep an eye on with the lunation. Venus is co-present with the new moon, and it is in the decan of Cancer related to both abundance and scarcity, and trying to reconcile those two issues within our lives. It also is maybe making us have expensive tastes, potentially. That's one of the significations with Venus and Cancer 3 is craving luxury. And with the square to Chiron, maybe there's a little bit of a wound, I guess, is one of the things that Chiron talks about, where we feel that we might not deserve that luxury or something like that. Like Chiron, Aries Chiron can speak to like having difficulty speaking up for ourselves and asking for what we want. And maybe there's something in our lives that we are wanting to pursue, and sometimes we can feel that it's difficult for us to ask for exactly what we want because of prior programming around how deserving or not deserving we are. So I think that could be part of it. I think that the main themes with this lunation, though, are how do we create safe spaces for ourselves and for others? How do we interact with others in a nurturing space rather than feeling like we're exposed to negativity or things like that? Cancer 2 is, Austin Cobb calls that deck in the walled garden. And I think that we're all in need, I think, in this point of some sort of grounding oasis, right? Some sort of energy place where we can restore ourselves. We have a lot of challenges going on in the collective, a lot of energetic lightning rods. I've been reading an awesome book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. We have a nice group that's been discussing it recently. And a lot of that book surrounds going through a human life and coming into alignment with the earth as our mother, which is a great theme for Cancer season because we are in need of some collective mothering right now. And I think that with all of the energy that's been going around, I was talking with a friend the other day about lightning rod issues, like controversial issues that increase our anxiety levels, especially around Mars and Uranus coming together. Uranus is a planet associated with like electric, surprises. Mars is a planet where those surprises might not be very good. But the grounding energy, and how do we deal with lightning strikes? Well, we literally have these rods that absorb the energy and distribute it into the earth. And this has been sort of my way of dealing with some of the challenging energies that we're experiencing right now and keeping myself grounded and centered so that when I am called upon to take action, I will be able to do so in a way that is effective. I've been getting outside a lot. I've been getting out in the garden. I've been getting out and planting pollinator habitat, pulling up my turf, just going out and observing and being quiet, right? Just quiet observation. I think that we are just so inundated with noise on the internet and the collective and the news cycles that I think it would really benefit us sometimes to just quiet our minds and be able to connect with something that is much more eternal than the ephemeralness of the changes that we see going on around us all the time. There are earth changes and then there are human changes, and they're on very different timetables. And I think when you come into alignment with earth changes, it actually it slows everything down, slows your mind down, slows your body down. It gives that anxious energy someplace to go. And I think that that's been hugely valuable for myself, but also I think it's good advice for many of us. So I hope that that's helpful for you, KP. Let's see. KP says, I'm relieved to hear it because this lunation seems so promising otherwise. Yeah, I think it's a good one. I mean, I think there's some traditional astrologers that don't use asteroids at all. So if you think about it in that regard, there's some asteroids I don't even have on the screen here. So they're not even informing my analysis of that. You can see the other one that I do have is Ceres right here, and the new moon is opposing Ceres. So that could be one challenge that I think that even more so maybe than the Venus Chiron square is Ceres is associated with feeding people and with food systems. So we could have some challenging circumstances around food systems, and I think that has been an issue in the collective, especially in war-torn countries, etc. So, okay. Janet's here. What's up, Janet? Says, hi, Spencer. Happy birthday. Happy to catch a live for the first time in a while. Definitely getting hot in Vancouver. Oh, Janet, I hope that you're doing well up there, my friend, to the north. Happy mothering to you. I know that you've been connecting not only with the earth, but with your own progeny, and I'm wishing you well with baby dragon, as we so affectionately refer to your offspring. It's getting hot everywhere, right? Even in a place like Vancouver, where normally it's, I'm assuming it's probably more temperate most of the time than some of the more southern locations, and even that is starting to get hot. We've got to roll with these changes. But thank you for being here, and thank you for the birthday wishes. I'm probably gonna have a pretty low key birthday this weekend. I don't really do like big parties or things like that anymore. I do really enjoy coming together with my community here online now, and those well wishes are very much appreciated. I love connecting with all of you. KP says, yes, very muggy. The weather is usually very similar to mine. Yeah, KP and I live in a similar climate zone, with Michigan and Cleveland being, about 3 hours apart from one another. And yeah, the wet heat is really tough to deal with. For me personally, I'm a cold weather hardy person, and the hot stuff, I just it's tough. So I've been really getting clear on my resiliency plans if my like cooling systems were to fail, and that's been a real focus of mine for the last few weeks, because our power did fail a few weeks ago, and it was very miserable, and it was something that I really needed to make sure I had clear. Steven says, this new moon at 14 degrees Cancer is trying my natal sun in Pisces at 11 degrees. Oh, well, then maybe it'll be a good time to find your walled garden, Steven. The safe space where you can just be yourself and be supported, and bring something that's important to you to fruition. I think that's one of the things that we might be experiencing. Steven says, feeling good, not allowing others to bring in negativity. I mean, I think that's healthy, Steven. I think it's healthy to have healthy boundaries and to take care of ourselves. Again, we shouldn't ignore the challenges that are going outside the world, but I do feel that we have to pace ourselves. If we burn ourselves out too quickly trying to make sense and find solutions to every single problem that comes to our doorstep every second of the day, which is, easy to do with a 24-hour access to news everywhere in the world all at once, it can be really easy to fry our nervous systems out. And then when there is a crisis where we specifically have to take an action in our local area, etc., it's much harder to do so. So I think that's not the worst way to be, engaging with things at this point. I will say, though, that there are some pretty challenging things on the horizon that we shouldn't ignore. I'm a huge fan of exercising our right to vote, even if we don't agree with every single thing that every single candidate represents, things like that. I do still think we have some responsibilities to be able to at least attempt to make a difference. KP says the new moon is sextile and trine my nodes. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I have Mars squaring my nodes this weekend in my solar return, so that should be interesting. Some churning points potentially. Yeah. Okay. Lisa said, gardening. Me too, Spencer. Gardening in the evening is extra good. I agree. If it's really hot where you're at, it can be very a good practice to get out there either early in the morning or later in the evening. I've been doing a lot of the more labor-intensive chores at those periods of time. I was mowing what is left of my yard very early in the morning last weekend, and that made it go much smoother rather than waiting till the middle of the day. Devin is here. What's up, Devin? Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Appreciate you. Always appreciate you, but thank you so much for the gift today. Devin says, I've been seeing this lunation as restoring Inanna's power before her appearance in the night sky in late August. Ooh, I like that, Devin. What Devin is referring to, well, Inanna is a yeah, and thank you for the birthday wishes, Devin. What Devin's referring to with Inanna is a Sumerian goddess who had to enter the underworld and try to help alleviate the suffering of her sister, Ereshkigal. And the Inanna myth is very much associated with Venus and Venus's visibility when it goes underneath the beams and emerges from underneath the beams. So right now, Venus in this chart is not visible in the evening sky, or the morning sky for that matter. It is Inanna is visiting the underworld, visiting Ereshkigal, holding space for Ereshkigal's suffering. That was one of the things that they talked about in that myth, is that Inanna, um, that she wasn't really able to just do something for Inanna rather than just hold space and hold witness. And that was what Ereshkigal in that moment needed, because she was going through some labor pains. And that was something she really appreciated. So I think on a lot of situations that we're facing right now, just holding witness for each other, for suffering, it can be healing, rather than feeling like we have to rush into trying to find a solution or to fix things on some level. This is some of the greatest powers of astrology, is being able to bear witness to each other in a very deep and meaningful way that we aren't often able to give to one another. And the symbols help us to open those doors and those windows. So, yeah, and Venus is going to be emerging from the beams, I believe, around 21 degrees of Leo in late August. And that's right on my natal ascendant, so I'll let you know how that's going. Hopefully good news. It seems like it would be, right? Devin says, what is your rising sign in your return chart? What is my rising sign in my return chart, Devin? Well, you want to see it? I'll pull it up if it's of interest. I'm not shy about sharing my chart, so let's take a look at it, and you can give me my birthday reading here. How about that? Let's see. So there is my solar return, July 6th, 2024. Although my birthday is July 7th. Like I said, there's sometimes a little bit of a difference in when the sun's going to exactly return to the time of your birth. So here is the sun returning to 15 degrees, 33 minutes of Cancer. And it looks like the rising sign is Pisces. So if I flip the chart around, here is Pisces rising with Saturn retrograde on the ascendant. Oh, that should be fun. Here's Mars and Uranus coming together. Mars is my time lord. And I've got a beautiful Moon Mercury conjunction opposing Pluto. So that's awesome. When I looked at this solar return chart, I wasn't super excited about it. Having Saturn on the ascendant, having Mars in its exile, being the Time Lord, applying to Uranus, some of that looks pretty challenging. I guess the one thing I will say that could be a saving grace is that Venus is pretty close to the Sun still, and that might be nice on some level. So, yeah, if you've got any thoughts or reflections on that, Devin, let me know, because that's what the energy I'm gonna be dealing with for the next the next year or so. And I'm coming off of a Jupiter perfection year. For those of you who aren't familiar with perfection years, that is a technique that Hellenistic astrologers used, where they would look at one particular house of your chart as being activated for every year of your life. It's to perfect something basically means to advance. So you're advancing the chart each year of your life. So in this case, I had advanced the chart through my 8th house and into my 9th house. So that you count every year, and it goes around the cycle in 12s. And in this case, now I'm going to be in a 9th house perfection year. And since my 9th house is Aries, that means that Mars, because Mars rules Aries, becomes the activated planet, not only in my own natal chart. So this is the themes of Mars in Virgo 3 are going to be activated, but also transiting Mars in my solar return chart. So you could see that, some challenges around finances maybe, and passing on a legacy with Mars in the 2nd house, potentially ruling the 4th and the 9th house. And then also, the Mars in the 10th house, something related to public expression potentially, or my job or something like that. Yeah, it doesn't look super fun, but I've had Mars perfections in the past and I've survived. So this is something that we have to look at too. Not every single year is going to be like happy-go-lucky fun times. And I think that accepting that sometimes we're at a peak and sometimes we're in a valley, and learning how to work within those limitations, I think is really healthy. And I think that, we'll see what happens. Having Mars in my solar return opposing my natal Uranus, that could be dicey, but here's the thing. And the I Ching that I pulled for today really reflects this too. There are ways that you can see things coming in the future where you can wait in fear and paranoia and in anxiety. And there are other ways that you can wait with a calm, centered, prepared frame of mind so that when the things do happen, you're able to respond to those challenges. And I much prefer to wait in peace than to wait in anxiety. And that doesn't mean you don't do anything when you're waiting. You can prepare for things, like as long as you don't overdo it to the point where you're not becoming functional. I'm a big fan of balance. So I'm not someone who likes to necessarily go to extremes. I get really interested in certain topics in my life, but going to extremes is something that I'm not a huge fan of. So for me, I try to prepare for things, but also try to just relax and live my life and stay in the moment. I think that's good advice for any of us when we're dealing with what could look like a challenging solar return, transit, etc. So that was my solar return. So yeah, if you got any reflections on that, Devin, let me know what you got. KP says, been watching Venus and feel strongly that her emergence will be significant for me personally, anxiously awaiting her. Yeah, I think that it's good. Like, I think when Venus is visible, especially when Venus emerges as the evening star, which she will. Like, so I'll show you what that means. So what we're looking for here is a separation. Now, various astrologers have different opinions on this. Some astrologers feel that it's a 10-degree arc of separation for Venus when she becomes visible. I tend to standardize it, like one of my teachers, Demetra George, to 15 degrees of separation between the sun and Venus here, because a lot of what we're looking at is symbolic. And I think that in this case, that makes sense to me rationally. Feel free to agree or disagree. I'm not the final word on any of this. But here is the 15-degree arc of separation around January the 29th, right? Around 21 or 22 degrees of Leo, okay? And that could be a really nice moment. I believe that's going to be right around the time that the Olympics are beginning. It will be easier, I think, to create harmony with each other. A lot of the things we've been working on behind the scenes will start to become visible potentially. And one other thing to think about with evening star versus morning star is if we put the sun on the ascendant right here, which is the eastern horizon, you can see it's at almost 6:30 a.m. at my location. You will actually be able to see Venus in the evening. I'm sorry, so this is confusing. So right now you won't be able to see Venus because it'll be below the horizon in the morning. So if it was rising before the sun, you'd be able to see it as the morning star. But apologize for that, I'll put the sun on the descendant. So when the sun is on the descendant, when the sun is setting around 8:30 in the evening around my time frame, you'll be able to see visibly Venus in the sky. And that's how we determine morning versus evening star, is its visibility either at dusk or at sunset, or dawn or sunset. So a really interesting technique. And of course, Venus being of the night sect, she prefers being in that evening star phase where she's able to be a little bit more receptive than she would be in her morning star sort of warrior goddess type of phase. So something to consider with that. Okay. Sergey says, it's kind of conjunct my north node. We'll see if I get the same thing happening. What is conjunct your north node? Is that the new moon or the emergence of Venus? Stephen says, my rising sign for my solar return chart is Capricorn. I am in a 7th house year, perfection year 2, Gemini on the 7th. Yeah, I think that I paid some attention to the rising sign of the solar return. One technique that you can do is you can overlap the ascendant of the solar return chart with the topic associated with your natal chart, because everything kind of is rooted in your natal chart. So for example, Because I'm a Pisces ascendant in my solar return, and Pisces is the 8th house in my natal chart, there's an overlap between the topics I'm dealing with shared resources, money of others, etc., with 8th house topics. So those are things that are probably going to be prominent for me in the coming year. I believe Stephen is a Sagittarius rising, if I'm not mistaken. So he had an overlap with his 2nd house, which is the opposite house to the 8th, sort of associated with him supporting himself and his own resources, right? And being a 7th house perfection year, maybe there's been conversations you've been having with your partner about how you make your own money or your own resources or things of that nature. So those are the types of things that we'd look at when we do a transit reading. Candy Corn says, Corinne has, you have the same birthday as my wonderful stepson. Oh, nice. We're good people. You know, we try our best. We're sensitive creatures, but I think that we care. And we try our best to show that care and love to people. As long as we're feeling safe, it's easy for us to do so. I think that sometimes we can hide ourselves away from the world every once in a while, depending on other things in your chart. But ultimately, try to do some good. Candy Corn says, I'll look at your solar chart later. Thank you, Corinne. I appreciate that. Lisa says, perfections are profound. Yeah, I agree. They are very powerful. And I really like the technique of tracking your Time Lord for the year throughout the transits that it's going to make to not only your own Time Lord, like I'm going to look for transits to my natal Mars, but also Mars transiting other planets in my chart, transiting Mars, hitting other planets. So it really is a powerful technique. I'll be looking forward to July 20th when Mars moves into Gemini and out of its exile. So I think that'll be an improvement. But there might be a few bumpy patches in the next couple weeks. Steven says, transiting Saturn is conjunct my natal Venus in the 4th. Restructuring values and home. The other day I dropped my crystal ball and the base broke off and the ball has a tiny crack in it. Oh, Stephen, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I think that when we have Saturn moving through the 4th house, there are definitely some opportunities to rearrange things in a foundation that can support us based on the reality of our lives. I think Saturn can be reality checks. And sometimes Saturn brings endings to whatever house it's visiting. But with those endings, it helps us to come into alignment with the things that we need to support us in this moment rather than the things that we've relied on in the past that might no longer be viable. Sergey says, the new moon is conjoined your north node. Oh, that'll be fun. So sometimes when we have lunations or other planets conjoining our nodes, there are fated events that are happening. The nodes generally refer to twists and turns of fate and fortune, especially because the north node and south node, as we understand them, are the north and south node of the moon in particular. And the moon was very much related to 2K, which is the random distribution of fate. So there might be some fated events that come to you, Sergey, with a new moon on your natal north node there, or one of your nodes. Yeah, Lisa says, cracks are where the light gets in. Yes, Stephen, exactly. We can't really get through life without a few cracks in our crystal balls, right? I think that it's just inevitable. Lisa says, Leonard Cohen anthem. Yes, absolutely. Everybody. I know how frustrating it is in the moment, though. I have a significant crystal collection. I love collecting beautiful stones, and there have been times where I've dropped some and they've broken or had cracks in them, and I've shed a few tears actually for some of them, but then you get over it and it just becomes part of the character of it. And then they're own beings, right? So they're having their own experience, I think, on some level. Yeah, Stephen says, oh yes, I've spoken to my partner about starting my own business. I think, yeah, this could be a good year for that, Stephen, with the overlap with your solar return ascendant in your 2nd house, for sure. Devin says, the partner's resources will be of great concern and focus, maybe through innovating community action and building can bring more to the table. That's for Spencer. Nice. Yeah, we're referring a little bit to my my solar return chart, which I'll put back up here. So Devin is referring to the overlap with the 8th house, right? And community action and resources potentially with Mars, being in my natal 10th house. Um, you know, Here's what I'll say. Even though, I'll bring this up because I think this is good demonstration, and I like that that what is the word, delineation. That's the word I'm looking for. The delineation that you made there, Devin. Um, so I think that you always have to look at the quality of the house that is perfecting. So in my case, the good news for those of you who are going through a similar pattern is the eighth house year can be challenging. The eighth house year can be one that's less visible, where you're dealing with some, tying up some loose ends from a completion of some sort. Where you're dealing with maybe, hiding away from the world because it's not a visible place to the ascendant. The ninth house, though, is very visible. It is trine the ascendant. It is the joy of the sun. It's a place where we find meaning in life. So this is the precursor to taking action out in the world. It is the cadent house to the 10th, which we call praxis. And the 10th house is related to the action that we're moving through. And Devin is pointing this out too. Moving the 10th into the local community might be helpful. Yeah, absolutely. But with the ninth house year, it is sort of the period before you're taking more public actions. So before you can take an action out in the world and make a difference, you have to understand your why. So this is a great time to study and figure out what is meaningful for you. So this might be something you witness me going through on this channel, is like, how do we find meaning? How do I personally find meaning? How do I teach those things? Ninth house is often associated with teachers. There could be more class offerings or something like that, mobilizing the community in that way. And especially with it being in the third decan of Taurus, there could be some things where we're reevaluating past actions and making some changes too. I think that is one thing that is really interesting about Taurus 3, is it shows us the results of our previous actions. And sometimes those results are successful and sometimes they aren't. And it gives us the opportunity to go back and redo some of those things. In the mythological sense, they talk about the litai, the hobbled old women that followed behind 8, which translates to ruin or rashness. And then the opportunity of the litai to offer up repentant prayer. So there could be something of that nature coming up with that. And we all might be experiencing this with Mars conjoining Uranus potentially. Devin says also Pisces is mutable, so it is a mix of last year's focus into this year's focus. I could see that, Devin. I would say this year, what's been going on for me? Just a lot of things. There's just been a lot of questions about, there have been some shared resource questions. I've been trying to deal with things like student loan things and stuff like that, and dealing with how to work and manage debt and stuff like that. So there could be a continuation of that. And just a lot of discussions about how, my partner and I are moving forward with a healthy financial life and all of those things. So yeah, I think that the continuance of that could definitely be in play. So we'll see. Last year's solar return, I'm trying to remember here, I'll just compare it for you. It's interesting to me. I hope this is interesting for you. I know we're looking at Spencer's chart. But if you have questions about your own chart, I'd be happy to answer them. But since it's my birthday, I appreciate the reciprocation here. But this is the chart from last year. July, hold on a second. I gotta change that. So, there we go. So this is last year's solar return chart. No, it isn't. Come on, brain. No, I was right the first time. We'll get it. Right, because the solar return will be for 2023, which is last year. So my focus last year was in the 5th house. So focusing on my children. I did have a lot of things going on with my daughter this year. Focusing on entertainment and how I pursue pleasure in life and things of that nature. And I've been actually learning a number of new games this past year. I've taken an interest in tabletop board games and collective card games that you can play. I'm really into the Lord of the Rings living card game right now. I really am enjoying learning a new system of knowledge and being in that particular magical realm. Um, and I've also learned a game called Eon's End this year, and just taken a real interest in cooperative gaming. That is something. It's not a competitive game. It's one where I'm cooperating. And in this case, it was with my partner Tanya. But I've been, for those of you out there who are interested in this kind of thing, I've been looking into online platforms. I'd be happy to get on an online platform and play some games with some of you if you're interested in that, to expand my social circle. So let me know if you're into the Lord of the Rings. You want to learn how to play that living card game. I found a website where you can do that. But yeah, it's been fun, and it's honestly, it's been helping me with my communication with my partner. There's all sorts of problem solving that goes into playing a complicated system of rules where you say, well, if you do this, this will happen. You have this amount of resources. You have this challenge in front of you, and then you have, to communicate to solve it. And we've been taking those techniques that we've been learning by communicating with one another through the gaming mechanism and using it for complicated projects in IRL, in real life, right? We've had a complicated project for learning how to set up and store a portable generator. There are many steps involved in how to get it to run, how to hook it up to the house, how to store it. And all of those things, we utilize the same techniques that we were using in these games. And I think that it's very valuable. There's something really magical that happens when you're cooperating within a game. And I think that we can take lessons from that and apply it to our own lives. So I think that's really what the ascendant for my last solar return in the 5th was speaking to on some level. And we had Jupiter here in the 10th, and that was nice. I'm kind of sad to lose that. And so you're going to see the difference between Jupiter in the 10th and Mars in the 10th in its exile. So, yeah, so it goes. What comes up must come down, and what is it low must rise again. So it's all cycles, and accepting that is important. Thank you, Deb, for the birthday wishes. Nice to see you, my friend. I hope everything is going well for you out there in Hawaii. It's nice to see you here today. Stephen says it's a great learning moment of how you delineate solar returns. Oh, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I enjoy sharing these techniques. Again, the main themes about the solar return is look for the profected house. Okay, and there's charts that you can find online if you're having trouble with that, but I've sort of started to memorize certain ages. Like, for example, we're always in a first house perfection at age 12, 24, 36, and 48, 60. Okay, and then you can kind of do the math around the circle. 10th house ones, you've got age 21, age 33. You do it in increments of 12. And when you can find that Time Lord planet, that can give you a lot of information. And as we are showing today, overlapping the ascendant of the solar return with the house topic that you are experiencing in your natal chart is super important. That's one thing that I really emphasize, that I've had taught to me by especially my friend Shu Yap, who's really good at solar return charts. So Shu, if you're listening, good day, my friend. She's from down under, and I hope that she's doing well wherever she's at. But it's always connected to the natal chart. Like, if you try to just take it completely disconnected from the natal chart, you're missing a lot of the valuable information that you could possibly understand through the connection with the topical parts of your chart. So, and thank you, Robin, for the birthday wishes here today. Yeah, I'm going to be 44 on Sunday, July 7th. So this is the last live stream I'll do before my 44th birthday. And we'll kind of be leaning into a new set of solar return experiences, potentially. Okay. So, any other questions? Any questions? What questions do you have? We can talk about, if you don't have any questions, we can talk about the astrology that's coming up. We're in the midst of a balsamic moon that is becoming new this evening. Um, we've got a number of aspects that are coming up, right? Right now, we are kind of dealing with the new moon in Cancer. As I'm uh, recording this, we're going to have Jupiter moving into Gemini 2, the second decan of Gemini, in a few days. That has some things ripe for analysis. Um, I think Gemini 2 in particular is something that is very much related to trying to hold many paradoxes and maybe having some sleepless nights around choices that we're trying to make. Jupiter, it loses some of its dignity by face in the first decan, and it moves into a Mars-ruled decan. Each decan is ruled by a planet in addition to the house that's overall ruled by something. So Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the whole sign is, but each section of it has a number of different types of rulers that you see in the wheel that I'm using here. We have bound rulers, and then we have the face rulers or the decan rulers on the outer ring here. So we'll talk about that in a second. But we got some comments coming in, so I want to make sure I acknowledge those. Cookerzilla says, what is the big Uranus transit people have at 44 years? Well, Cooker, I guess what I would be experiencing would be my Uranus opposition. So I've got Uranus opposing my natal Uranus right now. And that's kind of the quintessential midlife crisis sort of aspect, where you have, a lot of changes happen around this time. Like for those of us who had kids when they were younger, like myself, my daughters moved out of the house and off to college. And sometimes you go through career transitions and things of that nature. I think there's definitely identity shifts that happen when you have your Uranus opposition. I've been feeling a lot of attraction to becoming a steward of nature. I've done that in my life, but I've done it as a hobbyist, and I'm feeling more and more called to do it more publicly, if that makes sense. I'm really enjoying this book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and in that book, the author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, talks about her transition from being a parent, full-time parent, to her children leaving the nest, and how a lot of our meaning is wrapped up in some of those things where she talks a lot about mothering. I would almost venture to guess she's a Cancer rising, potentially. I know she's a Virgo sun, but I don't know if we have her birth time, but she sounds like a Cancer rising to me. And she talks about the transition from mothering an individual to mothering our communities, which honestly, I feel like I'm mothering the community right now in this channel. I guess that's a goal of mine. And then the transition in our elderhood of mothering the earth itself, of being stewards of just this planet and of nature itself. And I can definitely feel that transition happening in my own body, consciousness, desire, is to leave this earth nurtured because it nurtures me, and to give that energy back to it. It's one of the reasons I've been tearing out my lawn and putting in pollinators and observing how just the life comes back to the land that I'm just passing through. And how do we maybe band together as a community to learn more about how to do that together? I've been really enjoying the grounding of doing that. Like, I know that when we're talking on the internet, we have a very big air consciousness, right? We're literally discussing through the airwaves, but being able to ground all of this intellectual energy and discourse into physical actions, I think is super important as we move further and further into the air age. I've been having talks with my partner. We've been getting, I don't think this is super controversial for most people here, but we've been having a lot of talks about the billionaire class and their desires to colonize Mars and put all their resources into leaving this planet, because and one quote unquote scientist that my partner was listening to saying that the Earth is just a womb, and we need to leave the womb and be born into interstellar space travel. And I was like, and we both are kind of like, yes, the Earth can be a womb, but I think that type of thinking is really destructive, because what happens if we were to put all of those billions and billions of dollars into finding sustainable ways to just keep this planet a living, breathing entity that we are able to share with other species and keep it going? That to me, is something that, as I approach my 44th year, which in numerology they consider a master number, it is a year where you start taking, I think, you have the opportunity to take responsibility on a grand scale. And if I was thinking about what that means for me, it definitely has to do with conservation and ecology and interconnectedness and how we can become good stewards of the earth. So yeah, that's the 44th year, the Uranus opposition. Tom is here. Says, happy birthday, Spencer. Namaste to all. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you, my friend. Hope you're doing well over there in sunny San Francisco, or hot San Francisco. Devin says, with Mars as your Time Lord, what martial activities do you have planned? Are you taking a keto class? That's a great ninth house project. That's a great question, Devin. And something that I think I probably should consider more. When we have something like Mars as a Time Lord, I think it's important to give it a job to do. And if we don't give it a martial activity, I think it can create a backup of energy that can lead to injuries or anxiety or outbursts of anger. I think in my own personal case, I plan to do more gardening. I plan to be digging in the earth. I plan to, as the martial hymn, Orphic hymn goes, I plan to turn my weapons of war into plowshares, which are basically tools of the field. I plan to rip out more of my garden, or more of my turf grass, and plant more garden, which is very labor intensive. If any of you have tried to do that, it's not for the faint of heart. It can leave you spent. I would say that some of those martial tendencies also have been finding an outlet in trying to learn a very complicated game in the Lord of the Rings card game, which is a stand-in for war. I mean, it's a war game, basically. There are interesting magic elements to it. There is defending elements to it. There's strategic elements to it. But at the end of the day, it is based on the great war for the One Ring and the Middle Earth. And I think that's one way that could be that energy could be sublimated. I've been thinking about exercising more, Devin. I wouldn't say that I am lazy, so to speak, but I'm not someone who is like super into lifting weights, or, the exercise that I enjoyed was through games. And I mean that through sports. Like, I enjoy sports. I enjoyed the communal aspects of things. The individual working out type of thing bored me. I wanted to do something with someone else. But I very much enjoyed playing hockey and baseball, basketball, and I love the strategy involved with that. So maybe there's some way for me to become more physically active that is communal. But I love taking walks, and I love working in my garden. And I think I'm in pretty good shape, all things considered. One thing that I am pretty disciplined about is my diet. I eat very clean. I eat in a way that I eat very few processed foods. And I have a partner who is an excellent chef too, who takes into account some of my own dietary restrictions. I'm very allergic to a sugar called fructan, and she's been making some wonderful things. I know that we are, I think maybe as a collective, many of us are down on the 4th of July and celebrating as a holiday, myself included. It was a kind of a somber 4th of July here in America, with the being on the precipice of some very dangerous changes potentially if we don't take action soon. But I love any excuse to have good food, and regardless of all the mixed feelings about celebrating an empire that is probably on its way down, um, we did have some good food. We had Tanya made some excellent potato salad, and we had some ribs that we smoked. Devin, I was going to show you a picture of them because I know you appreciate that. But it was very tasty, and I think that, like I said, holidays for me and Tanya are an excuse to do what we call sport cooking. So I always enjoy whatever holiday just because I get to eat something special. But I've had to really reel in my appetites as I get into my 40s. I used to be able to eat until I just was completely stuffed. I had an incredible appetite as a Taurus moon, Cancer sun. And I had a very fast metabolism. But as we get older, our metabolism slows down. You don't have to eat as much. I love the rule of like eat until you're 80% full and then leave that 20%, because it takes a while for the food to get to your stomach. And sometimes when we have things that are pleasurable, they can turn into things that are painful if we have too much of them. So I think that that's important. So I hope that was a thorough answer of what I am considering to do with Mars. If you have any other ideas of activities I could do with Mars, I came across one thing, Devin. I came across a Qigong video today, and I have actually been doing some Qigong exercises, which is our breathing exercises and like lymph node exercises. I've been doing a lot of body tapping lately, where I've been loosening up the energy in my body through tapping, and I think I could really see myself getting more into something of that nature. I have done Tai Chi in the past, and I actually started studying Jeet Kune Do at one point, which is what Bruce Lee studied. But maybe you'll find this funny. I struggled with martial arts, especially Jeet Kune Do, because what I found happening with that particular style is what it was doing is it was a timing based martial arts, where instead of a 1-2 rhythmic beat, you became a 1.5 beat, if that makes sense. So you were beating your opponent by disrupting their timing for the most part. And what I found is it was training my instincts to the point that I got very nervous about making myself into a coiled weapon, if that makes sense. Now, I fully understand that the mental discipline parts of things are a huge part of any martial art. And actually, the spiritual aspects of it are very important. And Aikido is a good one, because I like Aikido, the idea of it, because what it does is it utilizes people's own energy against them, right? It's not an aggressive thing. It's a defensive posture, but also very effective. But the Jeet Kune Do, I don't think I was mature enough at that point to completely be responsible with making my body into a coiled tiger, if that makes sense. And maybe at this point in my life, I might be able to do that. But when I was learning it in my mid-20s, I got to the point I said, I am becoming dangerous, and I don't want to be dangerous. I want to be peaceful. I want my first instincts to be peace. And I think I had too much inner turmoil at that point to be able to do that martial art responsibly. But we'll see. Maybe there's something like that I could engage with, right? Devin says, definitely book a year ahead reading with Spencer. Oh, thanks, Devin. I enjoy doing those, and I have done year ahead things as well. I'd be happy to do that with folks. I've also been focusing on just doing like 3-month increments, because I find that is a digestible point of time. Since I'm so detailed, I tend to give more information, I think, than myself and the person can digest in one sitting. And by breaking it down into smaller pieces, we can really make an actionable plan. It's awesome. All right. Heather. What's up, Heather? Heather McVeigh. Nice to see you. We share the same North Node. I'm just a few weeks younger, also about to be 44. Happy birthday. I have that crazy 19th August double T-square full moon square Uranus mess as my solar return. Oh, Heather. So let's see. What is that? That's the end of August, potentially? Yeah, August 19th. Um, let's just take a look at that so I understand what you're referencing. But we'll get through it, Heather. I think that, oh yeah, here we've got the full moon. Um, and where's the square? Oh, it's square Uranus? Your natal Uranus? Oh, there it is. Yep. Okay. Gotcha. Now I see it. Now I see it. So we've got this opposition here. Oh no. I was looking at this moon, but I hadn't quite made the Uranus connection with it yet. But that's funky. That's fun. So that'll be an interesting one for you, Heather. Just probably, being pulled in a lot of different directions. But again, I am somebody who tries to not think of the worst case scenario. I want to prepare for those worst case scenarios, but I don't want to call it in, because oftentimes in astrology, our brains can bring us to the point where we get really nervous about an aspect, and it just ends up being a slightly different, usually less horrific type of thing. So I wouldn't wait in fear. I would wait with just preparedness and enjoying the moment that you're in right now. You've got another month worth of not having that as your solar return today. And you know what? I got another 2 days of not having Mars as my Time Lord. So I'm going to enjoy these last few Jupiterian days. Steven says, the Sun, Moon, and Venus is transiting my 8th house, and it's bringing up a lot. I've found it has helped heal many old wounds, too. Yeah, transits through the 8th house can definitely bring us into an understanding of some of the things that we've kind of put away, like the skeletons in the closet type of thing, and help us to bring them to the light of day and deal with them, for sure. Sergey says, I think I'll have more questions in later sessions. Both my kids have birthdays at the end of July, and my own is August 8th. Well, happy very early birthday, Sergey, and to your progeny. Yeah, it's having summer birthdays is I think it's kind of nice. I enjoy the ability to have warm weather and within reason, with not too warm. But it's a nice time to have a birthday for sure. Splits the year up quite nicely. I feel bad for all of you December birthdays who, as children, had to, mix and match Christmas and your birthday and get those overlap presents. So that's something I've never experienced, but my partner has. She's born on December 20th. She's gone through all that stuff, so I empathize with that. Candy Corn says, do you use the progressed lunation cycle? I find it super accurate. Do you pay attention to the progressed moon in sign or house and her aspects to the natal planets? The progressed lunation cycle. I use secondary progressions. So I will, I'll use that. I'll show you how I use that. I'll use my own chart as an example again, I guess. So we'll look at, so here is the secondary progression. As you can see, I'm in a, Sagittarius moon, progressed moon cycle. I guess that's one way of thinking about it. Is that more what you're describing? I think there might be another thing that you're looking at too. I think that, let me take a look. Let's see. Well, you'll have to explain that more, but are you referring to the secondary progressed moon, like we're looking at here, Corinne? Because that actually is that is something that I do look at. And here you can see I've got a trine between my sun and the moon in my progressed cycle. So it's still, I would say I'd consider it still the first quarter, but it's coming into the waxing gibbous phase. So that's kind of a nice progressed lunation phase for me in particular, I guess. I'm kind of gearing up for my progressed sun moving from Leo into Virgo. I think that's going to be a pretty big deal in my life. I've been talking with my friend Melissa LaFara, who's born a couple days after me. And happy birthday to you, Melissa, if you're listening. And she's already had her progressed sun move into Virgo, and she's had a lot of different thoughts about what she wants to do in the world. And I can see myself having a similar experience. The only thing I'm worried about with my progressed sun moving from Leo into Virgo is the sun in Leo ruling my first house is very powerful for health. And I've been very fortunate with my health over the last 30-ish years. And losing that dignity with the sun is, I'm a little concerned about it. But what I will say is that shortly after that, my progressed Mercury is going to move into Virgo, and I'm going to have a Mercury Cazimi in my secondary progressed chart in my second house in the first degrees of Virgo. And that to me is like, that could be something pretty substantial, something very interesting. Really powerful Mercury, just some, hopefully some great ideas and ability to act on those ideas, which is something that's been, I've had middling success with over my life. I have had a lot of great ideas, but bringing them to fruition has sometimes been a struggle. And maybe it's this progressed Mars in Libra. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. So Steven says, love martial arts activity suggestion, Devin. Yeah, it is a good one. Absolutely. And it's a great way to alleviate martial energy. If you would all forgive me for plugging my partner Tanya Andrews' Third Coast Mojo, another great way to remediate your martial energy is using some exalted or domicile Mars materia that you might find from Third Coast Mojo, or even utilizing its opposite, Venus, to be able to kind of to pare down Mars or calm Mars down. Venus is a great, paradoxical balm for Mars stuff. So, I'll tell all of you, I've been working very hard at my own peace of mind when it comes to dealing with my own anger. The ability to stay calm in the face of stress and pressure is something I've been trying to cultivate over the last, few years in particular, because as much as my public persona is one of being, hopefully a calming presence, I have my own moments of anger and of outbursts, just like any other human being does. But I really do feel that connecting with nature, which is, I think, very Venusian, has helped alleviate my the quickness of my trigger, if that makes sense. Now it's harder to get my ire aroused, and I appreciate that, because I don't believe in quick triggers. I think that there is some justified anger, but I do think that many of us have triggers that are way too quick, and that can lead to destructive tendencies. So I think managing our Mars energy through giving it healthy outlets is super important. Janet says, braiding sweetgrass is a great read. She definitely could be a Cancer rising. I think so, Janet. I mean, she talks a lot about mothering, and it seems to be a huge focus for her. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. We've got a nice small group where we're dealing with it, reading it together and discussing it. We've been having some nice discussions about the indigenous way of viewing the world, and some of the challenges around identity. Nobody in our group is indigenous, so we're trying to reconcile that with being of the culture that created some problems, to put it lightly, for indigenous cultures, and what does that mean, being white versus living in a space that was previously inhabited by the indigenous of the United States. There's a lot to reconcile. There's a lot of grief, and there's some guilt and shame that come through that. We've been working through some of those issues, but I think the main takeaway from the book has been just seeing the beauty in the earth, and seeing the ability to see more of this beautiful planet as having a living consciousness, of ensouling the world. And that to me is really powerful. It's super, super powerful. And it's something that we lost through some of the worst parts of colonization. We desouled the world in a lot of ways. And it's a real shame, because what it does is, when we desoul something, we lose respect for it. And by restoring that consciousness to a rock, restoring that consciousness to the animals and the trees around us, we have a greater and healthier respect for it, and in turn we'll take better care of it. So I think that this is a pivotal book that I'm reading here, and I really appreciate whoever suggested it to me. I think it might have been Devin, but we'll see. There's been a lot of people suggesting good books to me. Um, Steven says, I no longer allow others to push their values on me. Eighth house matters. Yeah, that's good. Knowing what our own values are important. I agree with you on that. I'm somebody who uh, I've been accused of. I don't know if I've been accused of this. I have been a little bit of a people pleaser in my past. I grew up in a lot of different environments where I had to kind of make adjustments for other people's values and other people's expressions. And I had to do that a lot as a kid, having many different step parents and things like that. And learning how to own my own thoughts and feelings without having to apologize for them and make adjustments, I think is important within reason. I think that um, I still firmly believe in listening to other people's values and taking that into account and letting it uh, change me. But there will be a core of our own values that are immutable, and figuring out what those are is important. And to me, what is coming up as what is immutable to me is that I believe that we are all interconnected and that the earth is worthy of our stewardship rather than our exploitation. And that's something that I don't think will ever change. And it is a core value that I think that like you're talking about here for sure. Um, what science quote here? Did we have a science quote? Did I miss something, Cookerzilla? Or did I make a science quote? Um, we were returning. Someone was talking about religious fanaticism potentially. Um, yeah, give me context on that if you want me to address that. Uh, Tom says, age 42 to 45, the mindfulness of the tightrope walker, the Neptune square and Saturn opposition. Elizabeth Spring, Astrology for the Third Act of Life. I'm going to have to pick up that book because I'm going through all that. Interestingly enough, Tom, I actually, the album that I was able to release in my music career, I released a 4-song EP while trying to, do other things, was called Tightrope Walker. And there's a song on it that's based on the journey of Philippe Petit, who was the French tightrope walker that tightrope walked across the Twin Towers. And I wrote sort of a 70s Elton John-esque arrangement of that. And it was really inspiring to me. And, check it out if that's something that you're interested in. I'll check this book out. Sergey says, oh man, don't be on the scientist case so bad. Right now, all of our eggs are in one basket, the Earth. We can all end ourselves with a small mistake and in control of our nuclear arsenals. Oh, okay. So that's the scientific quote that we're talking about, I think. Well, I mean, Sergey, I guess I will gently push back on that and say, yeah, our eggs are in this basket because this is our home. This is our beautiful mother. And it is something that we should cherish and protect. And the fact that we have nuclear arsenals capable of destroying it with a few pushes of a button is absolutely horrifying and shouldn't exist. And I think that dismantling those powers of mass destruction, I think, are part of the work that we're going to need to do if we're to survive. I don't know if you've checked out the climate on Mars, Sergey, or other folks, but it's not very conducive to life. It's pretty shitty. And I've seen enough science fiction to know that you make one mistake on Mars and you're not going to have a good day. But how forgiving has the Earth been of our mistakes so far? I would say pretty forgiving. Although she is getting pretty upset, I think, at this point. I think that I consider a lot of the extreme weather events that we are experiencing as the Earth saying, you know what, I'm ill, and these are my defenses. This is an entity that is becoming ill through a lot of our own actions as human beings, and we need to be part of the the healing antibodies rather than the virus itself. So I think that human beings have lived in symbiotic, positive relationship with the earth for tens of thousands of years, and we can again. But the last couple hundred years, we've gotten pretty off track, and we need to. I think that the repentance of Taurus 3, Mars and Uranus, is important right now. We need to atone for those past mistakes and come into a alignment, I think, with harmony rather than thinking that, honestly, Sergey, and I know your heart's in the right place, bud, but I think that the only people that want to go to Mars or can afford to go to Mars are the people that have consolidated all of the wealth and resources of this beautiful planet. And, you're going to have a few billionaires trying to make it on Mars while the rest of us are left to deal with a burning planet. And, I don't know about you, Sergey, but I don't have $1 billion in the bank account. So to me, my best bet is, hey, good old Lady Gaia. Another song you can check out on my SoundCloud. I wrote a song about being a steward of the earth called Lady Gaia. I'm pretty proud of it. It's a hymn to the earth. So check that out. But yeah, we'll get through this. Devin says, I think the winter Mars activities will be crucial this year. Yeah, with the retrograde. Yeah, we have a Mars retrograde coming up. And that's going to retrograde in my first house and into my 12th. So yeah, you'll get to witness someone with a Mars Time Lord with Mars retrograde. We'll see how that goes. Robin says, Spencer, have you read Tending the Wild by M. Cat Anderson? It is a book about indigenous traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, and the management of California's natural resources. I have not, but that is a great recommendation, Robin. I am always looking for more literature like that. I kind of started getting, I think part of what got me into this track, I know it was Sand Talk by Tyson Yunkaporta, and I'm pretty sure that was a Devin recommendation, and then that led to this Braiding Sweetgrass book. And I am very much wanting to learn more about indigenous ways of conservation, land management, just ways of spiritualizing the world, of resouling the world. That's something that I'm really passionate about. And it's something that is a legacy of my own family. I mean, say what you will about my ancestors that came to this country in the late 1700s. Many of them were Mennonites. But my great-grandfather, and I actually have letters from the Mennonite ancestors I have from the early 1800s. And to be honest with you, they were actually fairly, I think they were fairly liberal in the way that they viewed not only their own viewpoints, but other people's viewpoints, which was surprising to me. Their ability to hold space for other people, I guess at least my family was, from the letters that I've read. But my great-grandfather and my grandfather were biologists and conservationists, and that's a legacy that I take very seriously. For those of you who didn't know, I've said it a few times on the channel, but I want to honor this person, and that's why I keep saying it. But my great-grandfather's name was Howard Michaud, and he was a professor at Purdue University, and he was a steward of the Indiana State Parks down in West Lafayette, in that area. And he went to councils in Europe with people like John Muir and Aldo Leopold, and eventually he received a Lifetime Achievement Award in conservation for his efforts in teaching from Al Gore at the White House before he passed away. And I just really look up to him, and it's a legacy I hope to continue and keep talking about. So thanks for that recommendation, Robin. That's a great one. Tending the Wild by M. Cat Anderson. I'll write that one down. Cookerzilla says, I'm really worried for the first time ever about Mars-Uranus conjunction in my 6th house because I'm relying on an important international job to happen as planned. Will feel better once I'm on the plan. Yeah, so something with potentially with your health or with your care, potentially, right? Again, one thing that I would suggest, Cookerzilla, is that be prepared. Do the things that you need to do to take, you know, action if you can. But we need to be able to wait, I think, in centeredness. And I know it's tough to do. It's tough for me to do. I have 3 planets in Virgo, so I have my moments of anxiety for sure. Cookerzilla says, usually I don't worry about transits. Venus perfection year makes me hope I get my work life stabilized more. Absolutely. It'll happen for you, friend. I think, you know, this too shall pass. KP says, yes, born on New Year's Eve. I'm thinking of adopting July 31st as my summer birthday. Yeah, right? I feel you with all of you winter babies that had to, you know, share your birthday with that holiday season. It doesn't feel fair, does it? And it's hard to have parties, you know, in the middle of winter, etc. Although I didn't have money parties as a kid. I think I had one big birthday party at like a petting zoo. And I still remember that. It was super fun. I had like half my 3rd or 4th grade class there with me at the petting zoo, and that was super cool. But because of the way I was raised, having shuffled back and forth between parents that were split up, it was hard to have a birthday party, and I just never knew where I was going to have my birthday, let alone a party. So they've always been kind of mixed bags for me. Deb says, being perfected, teaching details. Yes, absolutely. So we've got 31st of July is Christmas in July, right? There you go, yes. Teaching. Steven says, the social workers helped me. Suggest I take anger management class. Oh, with Mars and Aries? Yeah, I mean, we all have different ways that we deal with our anger, for sure. Steven says, I took the class. It has helped. Yeah, Steven, I have Mars and Virgo, so it's a little bit different. I think when I get really angry, you know, instead of like lashing out in an explosion of anger, I think, you know, my combat style is I'm going to, you know, instead of using a big, huge sword, I've got like a little scalpel. I will dissect someone to death. Like, and I fight with facts. I've had some people who have found out that that they underestimated how prepared I'd be for a battle, and that's how I usually find success in that. But yeah, I think the other thing with Mars and Virgo, if you have that in your chart, we have to be careful of being overly critical of others too. And I've tried to channel that into utilizing it in my work rather than in my relationships, and that's been a lesson. Yeah, Deb's been working with identity. Deb's been a great contributor with our class, and just had some really great insights. So just appreciate you, Deb. Cookerzilla says, I'm also reading Dopamine Nation. Insanely fresh to take on addiction. It's way different than I expected. This feels like a Mars and Taurus in my 6th, smashing some conceptions about my daily life. Yeah, and you know what, Cookerzilla, it's a great point. Oh, Cookerzilla was saying the one about the scientist leaving the womb. Okay, so you weren't like getting on Sergey's case. So Sergey, we're not trying to tear you down, Sergey. We're glad that you're here, buddy. And I think that space travel, there is a Trekkie in me that is, you know, interested in it. But I do think taking care of our Earth first is important. But yes, the scientists about leaving the womb, I agree with you that is an important shift in thinking that we need to have. Like this is our home. It's not just like a gestation place. So yeah. But back to your previous comment, I think that I've been talking a lot about Mars and Uranus and preparing for you know, climate challenges and things like that. But I guess on a positive tick, Mars and Uranus coming together could help us to sever and separate from a bad habit that we might have had, or like you were talking about with addiction. Like it could just be the moment where you're just like cold turkey, you know, like it can help us remove something that's been a problem in our life almost instantaneously. So that is something to consider too. I just think that it's important for us with this on Algol that we keep our centeredness and we keep our wits about us. Okay. Yes, the 12th house, Mother Earth reflecting a revolution. Absolutely. Deb says she is now giving birth to what we have created. Yeah, and that's a problem, isn't it? That birth is uh, a heat wave in California. That's what we've given birth to. Um, I still do think we can make the changes that we need to make. I do think that I don't think we're going to be able to change everything. I think we are a little bit past the point of no return for the temperature raising, according to the research I've read. But we can decide right now by our actions whether we're going to have a habitable planet that is uncomfortable, or we're going to have an inhabitable planet and the whole species is not going to survive. The planet is going to survive. This is what I think we always make a mistake about, is that the Earth has its own consciousness. The Earth is going to survive. But the question is, do we as human beings, do we get to continue on this Earth in symbiotic relationship with it, or is it going to eliminate us? And I don't think that the answer is like, well, we got to find a new planet to destroy. I think the real crux of it, and especially what we're trying to learn through the indigenous way of looking at the world, is this is our mother. We need to honor our mother rather than disrespect it, which we've been doing for a long time. Steven says, Uranus-Mars conjunction, bring the movie Mars Attack to mind. Yeah, I mean, potentially. I think we need to like I said, there's going to be, the way that I think is that there's going to be a lot of people that are losing their cool around the Mars-Uranus conjunction for a number of reasons. We've got a lot of things in America that seem to be pointing towards losing the freedoms that many people have enjoyed. We have a potential, I don't know, I think I'm going to measure my words very carefully with this, but I think that it's very concerning, the direction that we're heading as far as having the type of idealism and freedom that we have ostensibly created this country on. Now, I know 100% that the history of this country is complicated, and it's a rabbit hole I really don't want to. I don't have all the best answers to. Know that if you're on the very liberal side of things, that I agree with you, and that I take all of the narratives around colonialism very seriously, and trying to figure out a way to undo some of that damage. If you're on the conservative side of things, I don't know if there are very many of you listening to this channel. Well, I'm not sure what to tell you. I hope that you understand that there is not necessarily the some of the social issues that people are trying to grab onto are just distractions from a huge wealth extraction from the American people, and it's going to be kind of a challenging place to live if only people that have exorbitant amount of resources are able to have freedom, and everyone else can, basically get bent, is where we're headed. And that's concerning to me. And there's been a lot of things that have been going around that we need to pay attention to. Heather says, with Saturn heading towards your 9th house, Spencer, you might consider a master's in ecology and spirituality. Would highly recommend the Sophia Center with Bernadette Brady. Oh, that's interesting. That is very interesting, Heather. I'll tell you what. I started a master's degree when I was about 23 years old, and it was in comparative religion. I have a bachelor's degree in creative writing and a minor in art and music, and I was very interested in philosophy, and I wanted to go, where I really wanted to go was Pacifica. I wanted to go to the Pacifica Graduate Institute and study comparative mythology. And it was financially was not in the cards. And then I had a baby, and I never finished my master's in comparative religion, but I had started, the first class I had before I kind of went in a different direction and did music, was a religion and ecology class. So I actually have some of those books still. It's fascinating that is sort of coming back around. But I would like to do it in a much more, the way that the teacher I had was teaching it was very dry. And I just don't think I was ready for those concepts yet. I don't think I had lived enough yet to really understand what they were trying to teach. And I think coming at that type of study from a middle-aged perspective rather than from a very young perspective might be interesting. So, that's a really interesting suggestion, Heather, and something that I think would be a great use of my time on this planet. So let's continue the conversation for sure. Oh, Cancer in the 12th, spirituality, ancestry. Yeah, that's my 12th house, right? I mean, I have ancestors that were both religious leaders, deacons in the Mennonite church, and I have conservationists. So it is an interesting blend for sure. And what I like about the Mennonites is they were sort of like liberal Amish. They were very much into simplicity, but they were also flexible enough to not be as rigid as some of what I've read about the Mennonite community. And again, I'm not an expert on either one of those communities, but I'm just going off of the information I have from letters I have from the 1800s from my great grandfathers, which is cool because they were some of the first people in this country that were able to read and write, and it's kind of neat. Sergey says the Mars-Uranus Algol thing has to be about the state of politics, at least for USA, UK, and France citizens. Yeah, definitely. I was reading today that a Labour Party president got elected. Yeah, Stephen says, doesn't UK have a new prime minister, dignitary? Absolutely. And actually, I'm pretty excited about that because I think that we need that. Like the more voices we have for the people, especially in Europe, which has seen an alarming trend towards authoritarian leaders. Any help we can get like that, I think, is good. So yeah, that is a moment for hope. But in America, we're seeing a concerning trend towards the potential of the return of an authoritarian leader who has been given some really scary powers by the Supreme Court. So, I don't know. We'll have to keep monitoring all of that. I have been talking about the Mars-Uranus as reflecting some of Donald Trump's sentencing in his felony case, but they actually they postponed his sentencing to, I believe, September 18th or something like that. So it's interesting to see what might be happening now politically. There may be, I think there's conventions coming up too, so maybe there's some changes with all of that potentially. Deb's been considering Bernadette Brady's program. I like Bernadette Brady. I love her work on the fixed stars for sure. Heather McVeigh says, I'm a Cancer rising, and thus Saturn is in my 9th, and I'm doing the MA in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology. It's online. I also left education to be a singer-songwriter, but Saturn has pulled me to uni. Yeah, that was a phase of my life that I think I needed to do. I was a singer-songwriter from age 20 to like age 38 or so, 39. And I was teaching music and songwriting, and it'll always be a part of me, and it was something I needed to pursue. But I'm feeling less attracted to that world than I was in the past, and more attracted to using my voice for a more collective experience. All the songs I was writing about I had difficulty writing about myself. I was always writing about characters, and I was trying to teach some of these concepts I talk about each day through my music, which is a powerful vehicle for sure. But yeah, there's so many different ways to deliver a message out into the world. I think what I am learning is that essence is what is the key. The form can change, and the delivery method can change, but as long as I keep the essence of what I'm doing around, I think the form, I don't have to be super attached to an identity or a form. Juliet is here. Hi, Spencer. Happy birthday. Thank you, Juliet. Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well down there Arizona, I hope that you're staying cool. I don't know if it's getting crazy hot down there at this point, but nice to see you here, my friend. Sergey says, I'm pretty sure Biden is going to step back from the election, so we'll see about the USA election, kind of expecting Dems to win with a better candidate such as Gretchen Whitmer. Sergey, I'll tell you what, I love me some Gretchen Whitmer. She is the governor of my beautiful state of Michigan. I think she's an incredible person who would make an awesome president. And I know that, you know, the conservative folks have attacked her and made fun of her and all these things, but she is very grounded, down to earth. I've really been impressed with the job that she has done, and I think that she would be a great steward of this country moving forward. I don't know what to say about the Biden thing. I watched that debate. I was concerned, as many of you are. I don't know what's happening with that. I don't agree with everything that Biden has done or represents, but I do know that if the choice is between him and Donald Trump, I'm voting for Joe Biden again. And I'll just be clear about that. And I think that if that's the choices that we have, that's what I would encourage the rest of you to do, to maintain democracy. But if we get a better candidate, I would be in support of that. You know, if we get someone that we can rally behind that isn't have some of the challenging issues that people are criticizing Joe Biden for, I hear that. But I don't think this is a time to get super like self-righteous about what's going on with Joe Biden. You can be critical of him, but like, man, the alternative is really, really scary. I understand that we're going through some crap, and I'm being pretty transparent about my feelings here, more so than I normally am, so hopefully it doesn't blow up in my face. But yeah, I think that we're at an inflection point that it's really important that we continue to participate in democracy, even if we're disillusioned, because you're not just voting for a president, is what I will say. You're voting for, you know, people who are appointing Supreme Court justices. You're voting for people who are going to have down ticket ballots with, you know, Congress, senators, etc. It's much more than just whatever figurehead that you have. So I don't know. And I don't usually get super into politics about things, but I do think that it is important to exercise our right to vote so that we can continue to have elections. Because I think if DJT wins, I really fear that we may not have an election again. And I think that fear is not an extreme fear. I think that that's a very legitimate possibility. Devin says, have you written your own hymns to the planets? Interesting. Not specifically, but I'd be into doing that. I've written a lot of songs about mythology. I have a song about Guinevere, and I have a song about Leda from the Trojan War, it's pretty epic. It's actually not released anywhere, but I should probably just put it up somewhere. It was basically my ode to Bohemian Rhapsody. It's like my Bohemian Rhapsody. But yeah, I'd be interested in doing more things with the planets for sure. I know that there are some musicians out there that have done that, and there's been some really cool work that had been done. Let's see. Oh, we've got a question. Raven's here. What's up, Raven? What significance does having the solar return ascendant match? What significance does having the solar return ascendant match the birth chart ascendant? Well, Raven, that's a great question. And I think that, it's going to overlap first house questions. I think that the body will be of concern, not of concern, but a focal point, right? Your own physical vehicle, I think, is represented by the first house. It's also related to your identity. So I think questions of who you are and your character and who you want to be out in the world are going to be highlighted. I think that the other thing that it can do, like if we look at kind of the overlap, I think it can make the themes of your natal birth chart and the positions much more concentrated. Like when we have a different ascendant, we have planets in different houses, and then we have these overlapping themes. Maybe there's a little bit of a diluting energy to that. But when you have like a perfection year, for example, that comes back around to the first house, all of the other planets are highlighting the birth positions. Because one thing that people don't completely understand about perfections is that you're not just perfecting the ascendant. You can actually perfect every planet in the chart. So like, for example, as a ninth house perfection year that I'm coming into, I'll just show you all again with my chart again. You can see that not only is my ascendant perfecting to the ninth house, but I can perfect my sun, okay, 9 houses away. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that would be almost like the sun in the 8th house type of thing, which is actually echoing the ascendant in Pisces. So a lot of focus on the 8th house. Same thing with the moon. You could take that and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6th house issues with the moon potentially. So we'll see how that goes. And this Virgo stellium, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10th house. Okay, Jupiter like in the 10th, Mars and Saturn in the 10th. That should be interesting. I have found this Virgo stellium be an enormous mixed bag when it comes to when I've had second house perfection years, or in the topic of money. Like Jupiter there helps, but it's not usually enough to overcome the challenges of Saturn and Mars. So sometimes I'll have really great things happen and then really hard things happen all at once. Like for example, when I was in a second house perfection, I started studying traditional astrology. I got a full ride scholarship from AFAN, which is an astrological network for networking organization, to the United Astrology Conference in Chicago. I went to the astrology conference in Chicago and got to meet many of the luminaries in our field and connect with them. I also met my astrology teacher, but I also was dealing with a lot of difficulties with my parenting situation. That was a year I had to step in and go to court to have a custody change because my daughter was in an abusive situation. So there was like the best thing that ever happened to me, or one of the best things, and then one of the hardest things happening all at once. So I think that you need to think about that if you have multiple planets in the same house and you see these perfections. There's very much an ability for astrology to be not all good and not all bad, and those things can happen simultaneously. So Raven, with your question here, just take a look at where you might have multiple planets in the same sign and see how those things might be blending together with that first house, being highlighted. It's good to see you here, Raven. Deb says, so much of the media is manipulative. I won't watch anymore. I agree with that, Deb, to a point. I think that it's important to take media breaks and to have some media fasts and to figure out what your own thoughts are outside of the talking heads and the influences. I do think it's a mistake, though, to not pay attention to what's going on in the world. So I think that things don't have to be black and white. Things don't have to be, let's completely stick our head in the sand and not pay attention to other people suffering. And I think it's also okay to go off and take care of yourself. I think that both of those things can be true. I practice that. I practice self-care, going out, grounding myself, while also trying to pay attention and stay current with as many issues as I can and that my nervous system will allow. I try to be balanced in my viewpoint. I try to see and hold ambiguities. I think this is the thing that I personally have received some criticism from my audience, not really the people here today, but some people in the past of not taking a more a black or white stance on certain issues. And I just don't see the world that way. I see the world as nuanced. I see the world as having like I just told the story of like having a year where I had a great thing happen and a challenging thing happen. Same thing with a lot of issues. We can denounce certain parts of issues while also acknowledging that there isn't an easy answer to all of it. So I think that being able to see ambiguities and nuance is super important. And I think also it's important to be able to see your news from multiple sources. I don't like getting news from one source. I like trying to figure out what the essence of an issue is without some of the filters that we get both from conservative and liberal media. So there's a great site, I believe it's called All Sides or All Media, something like that, and it shows you what biases are in each story and things of that nature. So I highly recommend that, because then that can allow you to make your own decisions on things without having to be manipulated by things. You're only manipulated if you allow yourself to be. But again, I don't think the answer is completely ignoring things, because that's when the greatest atrocities happen, is when we just say, well, it's not my problem, it's someone else's problem. Sergey says, have you looked into Barbot's cyclic index? Part of the reason I'm hopeful for the state of the world is his view of the aspects in 2026. I have not. I will have to check that out. If you can send me some information, Spencer Michaud astrology at gmail.com, I'd be happy to look at it. I'm always interested in seeing new ways of viewing the astrological cycles. And anything that is hopeful and good news, I'm interested in incorporating in, because we're just inundated with such the opposite. KP says, well said, Spencer. Regardless of your politics, it's tough watching people trashing what is essentially an elderly man with cognitive issues. Tough to be going through that on a public stage. I agree with that, KP. Like I said, I don't agree with everything that Joe Biden has done, but I do have empathy for him as a human being. Just as, honestly, I know that this is going to be a controversial statement, I also have empathy for Donald Trump as a human being. That doesn't mean I agree with what he does and that I'm going to support his agenda. But I do think being able to see people as human is important, and no matter if we agree with them or not. And it is tough to watch someone who is going through what he is going through, where normally at his stage of life, he would be able to just be enjoying his retirement or whatever it is. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to all of that. Like I said, though, if it's a choice between him and the alternative, I'm going with Joe. And I'll grit my teeth and I'll do what's right for the future of our democracy, even though I don't agree with all of it. Okay, so there's nuance to that. But I digress. You don't have to agree with me on that. Steven says it's sad that the president's wife is not doing him any favors. Yes and no, Steven. I think his wife is very supportive, and she seems like a pretty nice lady, but I do think that she may be propping him up a little bit, and that to me is unfortunate. I think that I've been thinking a little bit about the comparison to Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the fact that she was very stubborn in holding on to her Supreme Court position well into her old age, when she could have stepped aside when there was a liberal president. But I don't know. Here's why it's so complicated, Stephen. Even when there was a liberal president, the other side did not allow a Supreme Court justice to be confirmed, Merrick Garland, because they made all these arguments about it being too close to the election, blah, 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 hand-jerking motion, okay? And then they went and did the exact same thing by forcing through one of their candidates very close to an election. So we're just not playing by the same rules. You know what I mean? And that's frustrating to me. And I don't know what the solution is. Heather says, Uranus conjunct Mars is squaring my sun in the 2nd from the 11th. I canceled traveling to a conference, a 5-hour drive, and other group events. Would you have done the same? Uranus conjunct Mars is squaring my sun in the 2nd. Well, Heather, if you want my honest opinion, I don't attend conferences anymore. If you really want to know what since this is like, you know, Spencer being like unfiltered and honest, I don't go anywhere indoors without a mask on, and I don't attend anything with large groups of people. I still think COVID is a very real thing, and I very much value my health and my mental cognition, and I'm not willing to put that at any sort of risk. So if you're just asking me personally, yeah, I think you did the right thing. If you're asking me from an astrological perspective, yeah, probably, especially if you couldn't afford it with something going on in Mars and Uranus in your 2nd house. If there's an unexpected expense that comes up, Heather, I think that could be a smart move. Uh, that being said, not everybody has to do everything the way that me or my partner are doing things. I totally understand if everyone has a different situation where they have to go do things. Like, I know a lot of people, especially with children, don't have the luxury of being a hermit like I have chosen to be. But I do think there are ways to reduce your risk in Uranus Mars types of situations. And I think that I don't think you're really going to regret it. I think that if that was an opportunity, if there's an opportunity to do that in the future, it'll come back around. And I think that I am a very cautious person. And that's the only way you could describe me, as conservative. I am cautious about my safety, and I am fairly risk averse. So sometimes take my advice with a little bit of grain of salt, because when it comes to risk, I don't like to take really any. So that's your friendly 12th house Cancer Sun Taurus Moon advice. But I think you'll be okay, Heather. And again, you might actually be very grateful that you canceled that if there is something that comes up that is taxing to your resources with Mars and Uranus. Yes, KP says, agreed, Stephen. If that were my hubby, I would not be encouraging this. Yeah, I hear you, KP. The stress of being president is so great. I mean, look, just remember seeing how much the presidency had aged someone like Barack Obama, and it has subsequently aged a man like Joe Biden, and it's just a really stressful job. And I think that it's just tough to do. And I have a lot of empathy for people who are put in that position. I could never be president. I would never want to be president. I think that there's a really too many difficult decisions that I just would not feel comfortable making. And I just think that it's a tough job. And I would reiterate that it's not just about the figurehead. Yes, the president has a lot of power and has been given a lot more by what I consider a corrupt Supreme Court. But I do think that it's much more than just one person. And if you are choosing to vote, which I hope everyone who is American here does, you're voting for much more than just one person. You're voting for Supreme Court. You're voting for Congress. You're voting for all those other things. So even if you're disillusioned with one man's mental health, it's irresponsible to just sit it out, in my opinion. Julie, thank you so much for the super sticker. Sorry it took me a while to get to it. Says, thanks, Spencer. I'll catch the replay later. Have a great birthday weekend. Oh, Julie, I hope I didn't miss you on here. And thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate you and your generosity. And I hope everything's going well. And thank you for the birthday wishes. Devin says, if the ascendant of the solar return chart matches the natal, then the native has more agency to act in the world and manifest the goals of the natal promise. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is kind of what we're saying, like that the natal chart itself has more concentration of those particular issues, for better or for worse, right? If you have a difficult planet in your natal chart, if your solar return ascendant is the same, that issue is not going to be alleviated by anything. So yeah, good call, bud. Okay, we've got Reverend Kai. What's up? Nice to see you. Yes, and the Barbeau is giving you hope too. Good. More reasons for hope would be great. Steven says Ronald Reagan was going through the same thing in the 80s. Yeah, I mean, again, it's an extraordinarily stressful job. Extraordinarily. It's going to take years off of any individual that takes on that mantle of responsibility. So, doing it for 8 years is a lot. I'm almost of the opinion that maybe we shouldn't have presidents be allowed to do it more than one time, because maybe you just need fresh energy, something. I don't know. Yeah, definitely a good point. Steven says, good point, Spencer. Our world is so different now. Yeah, it is. It definitely is a different world. Reverend Kai says, I enjoy Spencer Unfiltered. These things need to be talked about. Reverend Kai, I'm doing the best that I can. And some days I'll choose to be more public about my own opinions, and other days I will choose to focus more on the astrology at hand and more on maybe what more of your thoughts and feelings. And it doesn't have to be linear, right? Um, I try to make this a space that is welcoming for the most amount of people possible. And I don't enjoy outing myself as one thing or another because I think it makes it harder to draw people in that we could eventually have compassion and empathy for. I think that in the past I have had people in my life that don't believe the same things politically that I do that I cared about very deeply. And they were complicated people. They were nuanced people. And just because they had one political feeling that I didn't agree with doesn't mean that they weren't worthy of love and compassion and sometimes even respect. And I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to straddle those lines. And I still think that even though there are people out there that I vehemently disagree with politically, I still think those people are worthy of our empathy and compassion. Because what it does is it gives them the opportunity to see something from another perspective. If I got on here every single day and I just was a firebrand and said, fuck this, fuck that, these fucking people, like, like these assholes, you know what I would do? I would get people going like this, and I'm covering my ears for those of you who are listening. They would just start to tune me out completely. They would put their defenses straight up and start tuning me out. And there would be no opportunity for me to reach any sort of consensus with them or to change hearts or minds. Same thing with me. If someone's coming at me with an opinion where they're just like saying F this, F that, and like screw you and screw these people, my defenses go up and it's hard for me to hear them. So I think it's really important to, when we see divisiveness, we don't have to necessarily contribute to it. I'm not saying you have to agree with those folks. I've just spent an hour saying that people need to vote and how concerned I am for the future of democracy. What I am saying, though, is that I think it's really important to leave space for people to change and for people that you disagree with to understand that you may disagree with them on some issues and there might be other things that you can find common ground on. And that's life. That's the reality of living different experiences on this planet. Now, are there certain things that we need to like all agree on really fucking quickly? Yeah. We need to start agreeing on climate change, right? We need to start agreeing on taking care of the planet, or we're not going to have a planet to like live on, or we're not going to have an environment that we can live in. See what I mean? Those are things that's like, that's not the climate change is not a political issue. Let me just, if you want my true unfiltered, like this is what gets me fired up. Climate change is not a political issue. Climate change is a human issue, and we need to figure it out. And all the other political stuff to me is like completely distraction. It's not unimportant, but should be so far below making this planet habitable. Okay? And you know what you don't realize, actually, what I'm not realizing in this moment is that climate change actually is fueling a lot of these other conflicts. When you have climate change, resources become more scarce and people fight over those resources. When you have climate change, people get displaced from their countries that are hotter than other parts of the world. And then you have, quote, immigration issues that everyone gets all up in arms about. It's climate change. That is the singular biggest issue that is facing us as a species that you just can't deny it for very long. You know, I mean, Democrats are going to live in 110 degree heat in California. Republicans are going to be dealing with 110 degree heat in California. That's a great equalizer. And that is the essence to me of Uranus in Taurus 3. Humility in the face of nature. No, Mother Earth doesn't give a shit what you believe or who you voted for. It says, start taking care of me now. Like, right? Now. You better change, or I'm not going to be able, you're not going to let me be able to take care of you. If we don't start have a reciprocal relationship with her, she can't provide for us. Does that make sense? So that's my impassioned plea to all of you to take that issue seriously, whatever side of the fence you fall on with other issues. Yeah. Thanks, Raven. She's thanking Devin and myself for the question she had about the ascendants. Steven says, I asked many people yesterday why we celebrate 4th of July. I was surprised that many people forgot what it was all about. Well, that's a loaded question, Steven. I don't know how to answer that. I think that, again, American history is nuanced, and there are some parts of it that are amazing. There are other parts of it that are completely horrifying. And I think that it's important to try to take a balanced viewpoint. And I'm not going to, I think I've already exposed enough of my opinion on it that I don't have to go further into it. Deb says, we are really a single raindrop, and how you are affected impacts us. Here on the islands, Hawaii, when one hurts, we all hurt. Us gathering and having this space gives us connection and hope. Absolutely. And very well said, Deb. I agree. And that's why I try to hold space for people who have differing viewpoints than myself. That being said, the way that I try to create a space where we can be honest with each other is that we have to interact respectfully to one another. So I do have my lines. If someone is mistreating someone else in this chat or on this channel, they're gone. No questions. That's it. They're done. But if someone is expressing a different viewpoint respectfully, then we can have a conversation. Does that make sense? Okay. What's up, Jennifer? Nice to see you, friend. Heather says, I voted yesterday in the UK election. Well, good for you, Heather. We had a low turnout. I think there's Saturn and Pisces apathy. Yeah, and I'm afraid of that in America too, Heather. But it seems to me, depending on your political views, that they had a somewhat of a successful outcome if you're into a more liberal viewpoint. So who knows? We'll see. But here's the thing. The other thing that I think about politics, I think of it's a Taoist story that really is fascinating to me. And it's the story of the man who and a horse, right? And the story basically goes, you have a horse that a man finds this horse, and everyone's like, oh, what great fortune you had finding this horse out in the wild. And then he's like, I don't know, And then the horse kicks him, and he breaks his leg, and everyone's like, what horrible fortune you just had getting kicked by that horse. And he's like, who can say? And then a war comes, and he isn't able to go to war because he's injured. And they're like, what great fortune. And then, and it keeps going on in this regard. And I think that oftentimes we have to let events play out in a macrocosm before we can, quote unquote, judge it, right? The world just keeps turning. Experiences keep happening. We as human beings ascribe value to it. So this is something that I'm trying to aspire towards is I don't try to get overly reactive to every single twist and turn of the wheel, because that's a way to exhaust yourself. I believe in connecting with the hub of the wheel, right? The centered part of the wheel that is immutable, that is eternal. And politics is the most spokes type of thing ever. So that being said, we do still have to participate, and we do have to speak up when we observe the suffering of others and try to do everything we can to change that. Reverend Kai says, I agree with everything you've said, especially climate change being a driving factor. It is also acting as confirming omens for many apocalyptic accelerationists. Yeah. And that's a worldview I don't agree with, the apocalyptic accelerationists. Like that's one of the things talked about in Braiding Sweetgrass is the difference between a Christian mythos and the way that they look at the earth and the way that an indigenous person would view the earth. You know, in the Christian mythology, the garden is a place of temptation and of evil, right? And to the indigenous people, it is a gift. It is a mother that is providing for us. And that concept alone, if we started following that wisdom, would change so many things. So many things. And not to say that there isn't some beautiful messages within the other religious systems, but that one thing in particular, I really like this book by Sophie Strand, The Flowering Wand, and she has a really different take on Christianity, and one that is more respectful of the earth and more co-creating with it. I highly recommend that book for people too, if you're struggling with that, the dichotomy in those ethoses. Jennifer says, wonder if you got my message, Spencer, the other day in your email regarding generator hookup. I did, Jennifer, and thank you for sending that. I just haven't had a chance to write you back yet, but I appreciate that, and thank you for reaching out, and we'll look into it. I think that's a great option to be able to, figure out how to get the blower on our heater hooked up to a generator if we lose power in the winter. So thank you, friend. Okay, so we're at about 2 hours here, and let's do this. If anybody has any questions, we've gone down some interesting rabbit holes, as we are apt to do in Q&As. But let me just give you a little overview of what's going to happen in the next week or so. We'll talk a little bit about it. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, and then we'll do an I Ching and an animal for Cancer season. What do you say? And wrap this thing up with a bow. So that Jupiter in Gemini 2 on the 9th, it's really important to be ethical around that period of time. This is Jupiter on the fixed star Aldebaran, and it requires you to be above board with things. And it's one of the royal fixed stars. We talked about Bernadette Brady earlier, and the ability to stay organized. There's a mythos associated with Jupiter, with Aldebaran, called Ahura Mazda, and he was a great general. And they talked a lot about how ethical he required his soldiers to be. So Bernadette Brady talks about the power that a fixed star can give you, as long as you avoid the nemesis. In this case, in Gemini here, even though Taurus was the original place of this, ethical considerations are very important. So try to stay above board. Okay, the Sun is going to trine Saturn on the 10th. And I've gone through all this in great detail in my astrology of July, but I'm just giving you the heads up here. So I do think that this is another interesting time frame where we've just seen Jupiter moving into Gemini 2. We've got the Sun trining Saturn, so this could be a moment to be able to work within our limitations, and especially knowing what our personal limitations are, as far as not overestimating our abilities, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. So this could be a moment for that particular, just sober, rational thinking, even though it's in a water sign. We have Venus moving into Leo on the 11th, and it immediately opposes Pluto. So you could see here we've got, Venus will make a trine to Neptune right before it opposes Pluto. So we could have a really beautiful moment with the Sun trining Saturn around the 10th and 11th, and then the trine to from Venus to Neptune. But I wouldn't get too comfortable in that space, because it's kind of a sobering moment when we have these planets ingressing from the trine to Neptune and then opposing Pluto immediately after ingressing into Leo. So there might be some relationship challenges. There could be some questions of visibility versus wanting to blend in. I think that's the real crux of that decanic axis between Leo 1 and Aquarius 1. And then we have our first quarter moon on the 13th. At about 22 degrees of Libra, okay? And that's really very close to a fixed star called Arcturus, which is related to domestication. But also the fixed star Spica is near that area as well. And that's actually a very fortunate fixed star. The third decan of Libra speaks towards increasing that which is lacking and decreasing that which is excessive. It's really about maintenance to find balance. So we might be having to balance out our excesses versus our areas of scarcity with the Sun in Cancer 3. So those might be some of the challenges we're working through. And then finally, what we've been talking about a lot today is Mars conjoining Uranus on the 15th on the fixed star of Algol. And this is one that astrology's been looking at for a long time. It's one that, makes people a little nervous, and rightfully so, because Mars generally has been associated with as a planet of misfortune, but random misfortune, not necessarily misfortune from your actions necessarily, just from the twists and turns of fate, because it is part of the lunar sect, and the lunar sect is ruled by the moon, and the moon was said to be a planet of 2K, or the random distribution of fate. So there could be, I think that the key with this is there could be some things that are outside of your control that are greater than you, okay, that could be challenging. They could be unexpected. We could try to predict what they are here, but I just have a feeling there's going to be some wild card that we don't expect coming up. I can try to give you some insight into it with the Decan of Taurus, which talks about remediating past mistakes. It talks about forces of nature that are out of our control. This is why I've been really kind of harping on resiliency planning. But at the end of the day, I think it's very important with this aspect on Algol, which is Algol is the blinking eye of Medusa. And for those of you unfamiliar with the story, she lost her head. She lost her head by the hero Perseus. And I think we could take that metaphor and figure out, how do we keep our wits about us when things unexpected come up that challenge us? We also can see Algol as a very protective fixed star. There are feminist versions of the myth that say that Athena gifted Medusa with the ability to turn men to stone after she experienced a rape in the temple. So maybe there's something where you're feeling protective, and you're doing something to protect either yourself or others. Just slow down is what I will say. Heather was asking me about taking a trip or doing something risky, going to a conference, and we're all going to have a different idea of what a risky behavior is. And I think that I would highly recommend taking your time, taking things slow. This isn't the time to go skydiving. This isn't the time to take a zip line, through the Amazon or whatever, because just the possibility of accidents is increasing. So just be wary of that. And I think that you will be able to be better prepared for what you have to deal with in your own chart. And not everyone's going to experience it similarly. Some people, this is going to pass, and it's like, well, what was the big deal about that? For other people, if it's their Time Lord or they have an important point in their chart it's activating, they may have a really a tough time. So just have compassion for the people around you. Realize that there could be a lot of noise around that period of time, and that you can choose how you react in the moment. Okay. And thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, appreciate you. I appreciate you sending me that email. I'm sorry I didn't get to it yet. I've had a lot on my plate lately, and sometimes there's a few things that slip through the cracks, but appreciate you. Deb says, I've been seeking ways to atone past poor behaviors. It's actually a great way to deal with this aspect. There could be something in our lives that we aren't proud of, or that we just made a mistake through our own ignorance, and that's okay. We're allowed to make mistakes in the past, and we're allowed to do something different in the future, and that could be part of this Mars-Uranus aspect as well. Okay. All right, friends. So I'm going to finish this off with an I Ching reading. So thank you so much. Do me a huge favor before I get to that. If you're new here, if you've been hanging out, just go like the video. That's the easiest thing to do to support the channel. Subscribe if you're new. I'm happy that you're here. So I hope I didn't scare you away with too much political talk today. It's not something that we dive into too often on the channel, but I do think it's important to acknowledge some of the very real things that we go through together and try to contextualize it astrologically in particular. Everyone is going to have a filter when they're doing astrology. We all have our own consciousness and biases that we filter things through. So I'd be lying if I didn't have some of my own. So I try to be as objective as I can, but that's just being human. So I hope that you'll come back if you're, on the fence about that, but please like and subscribe to the video. I care about all of you. And I know that, for the most part, everyone here that has been participating in the chat has been super respectful, talking about challenging issues. I know that everyone here has a good heart, and and every time I've gone down some of these challenging roads, I'm constantly impressed by the way that people have been able to discuss it in a rational and mature fashion. So I'm just going to give some of the applause to you. And what it does is it allows me to feel safe expressing some of my own more deeper feelings about things. And I appreciate that, and I value that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we'll do an I Ching for Cancer season. So here's our I Ching reading. And it is number 37, the family. Sounds like Cancer, doesn't it? Right? It's changing to hexagram number 5, which is the one we got for July. I mean, that hexagram keeps coming up. And it's something that I've really been weaving throughout the thread of our talk today, is that, waiting in fear can lead to more negative outcomes. But waiting in preparedness and in centeredness and in peace can lead to being able to respond to a crisis when it comes. And I think that that's the best way to prepare for a negative astrological aspect, is just centered, calm, peaceful, as much as you can. I know it's hard to do. It's not easy to do. And sometimes we have to take a time out from dealing with every single problem in the world, right? The family is interesting, though. The family also translates to the household, the clan, close-knit groups, playing your part, establishing expectations, serving as an example, creating mutuality and trust. Jack Balkin has a really great way of describing it. He says the basic theme of this hexagram is that when all the members of the family have their appropriate relationships to one another and the family is well ordered, it will be at peace. The structure of the hexagram is thought to model these ideal relationships. So this talks about playing your role within society. Not everybody is going to have the same role. And we all have gifts and talents, and we all can contribute something meaningful, but we don't know it. Not everyone's going to be president. Not everyone's going to be a YouTube astrologer. And that's okay. We need to figure out what we can contribute to the greater good and to the collective. And we have 2 changing lines in this as well. So we have the second changing line. It says, not chasing after whim or desire. Remain in the center and prepare the food. Perseverance brings good fortune. So I'll read you another excerpt. To remain in the center means to cultivate the virtues of modesty and moderation in your actions and desires. To prepare the food means performing everyday labors, living up to your duties, and taking care of others. Attend to your immediate responsibilities and quietly carry out your obligations to the best of your abilities. Do not act impulsively. Do not make yourself unhappy by pining after the things that you do not have. This is not a time to put yourself forward or try to achieve things through force. Rather, you should progress step by step and labor unselfishly. Stick to the business at hand and consider how you may be of help to others. I mean, that's great advice. Cancer loves to cook and feed and nourish and support others. So this is great advice for Cancer season here. 9 at the top, the changing line at the top. It says, he inspires trust and commands respect. In the end, good fortune comes. So Jack again says, the success of a group depends on the quality of its leaders. This applies both to those who are in official positions of authority and those who lead by their example. Examine yourself and hold fast to your ideals. If you are true to yourself, you will influence others in exactly the right way. You will not need to exert authority. Rather, the strength of your character and your benevolence will naturally draw others to follow your lead. Carry out your responsibilities faithfully, and you will win people's confidence. In the end, you will gain the recognition you deserve, and you will be respected for your ideas and for your good works. It's great advice. I think that just being the best version of yourself in your dealings with others can lead to good outcomes. And then finally, this hexagram number 5, waiting, calculated waiting, biding your time, waiting for rain is a metaphor, nourishment and replenishment. And this hexagram really speaks to circumstances beyond our control. So I'll read one more excerpt from this. It says, because of circumstances beyond your control, you must wait patiently. You cannot take direct action at present. Nevertheless, you must have faith that things will work out for the best eventually. We had some really nice, hopeful interjections today in contrast to some of the things that are a little scarier. And I really appreciated that in the community. Just as we cannot force the rain to fall, we cannot force propitious circumstances for action. Instead, we must let them come to us, just as the rain will eventually come and replenish and nourish the earth. There are 2 kinds of waiting. We've talked about them today. The apprehensive waiting of the weak and the calculated waiting of the strong. The weak person waits out of fear and despair and becomes increasingly filled with anxiety and agitation, and so finally plunges ahead at the wrong time with disastrous results. In contrast, The strong person waits because waiting is the best way to maximize the chances for eventual success. So calculated waiting is a sign of strength, not weakness, of assurance, not resignation, of competence, not deficiency. So it takes strength to be able to wait in centeredness and in peace. And I hope that you all will be able to tap into that as well. And then finally, we have an animal. And the animal is the raven, which we haven't seen yet. This is an animal I have not pulled for yet, and it's fascinating to see that come today. The raven is a very intelligent bird. I've been trying to make friends with the crows/ravens in my neighborhood. I think they're crows, and I don't think I'm far enough north for ravens. But the raven and the crow share a lot of similarities symbolically, and they talk about speaking up for yourself, right? They're great communicators. As I hope I've demonstrated today, that sometimes it's safe to share an opinion. I hope that it was safe for me to share some of my deeper held opinions today. I know that you have all made it a safe space for me to do so, as I hope to make that for you as well. So it encourages us to speak up. It encourages us to pay attention to our dreams and our visions. It sometimes can be an omen of change, an omen of death, but a death can be symbolic. It can be a change, a death of a circumstance and a rebirth of something new. A raven is a very playful animal. And this is another way that I've been kind of maintaining my mental health during very challenging times, is I'm taking time to do serious things, to be a good steward of the earth and to show up for my community here and try to guide to the best of my ability, but also take time to play a game, to learn new systems of knowledge and language, etc. So I think it's super important to balance out our seriousness with the changes that we are being tasked to facilitate. But we also need to learn how to have fun and lighten up and celebrate not only our achievements but each other, and remember why we are doing the hard work that we are faced with in these hard times. I mean, if you look at the Lord of the Rings, I love those books, and I really love the game that I've been playing. And you look at those hobbits, they had the excuse me, I'm getting kind of choked up just thinking about it. Let me center myself for a minute. Frodo had such a heavy burden taking that ring to Mordor. And I think all of us feel the heavy burdens of our society right now, and of trying to be not only good examples, but to actually take actions to alleviate the suffering of others, because we know that there are forces that are gathering and pooling that threaten the Shire folk, the regular people, the people that are innocent and that are just trying to live their lives in a peaceful fashion. And it's stressful, and it is, it changed someone like Frodo over that journey. And I keep remembering that quote where he asked Gandalf, he's like, I wish it didn't have to be this way. And I tell you, friends, I wish it didn't have to be like this. But Gandalf tells him, we don't always get to choose the times that we're born into. What we do get to choose how we respond and the actions that we get to take. And I think that's super important to remember right now. And I guess the point I wanted to make about that is, even with the heaviness of the responsibility that those simple folk had, they still took time to sing. This is one thing you don't get when you watch the movies versus the books. The hobbits, Tom Bombadil, they're always singing songs. They're enjoying the pipe leaf. Tom Bombadil, a stand-in for the spirit of nature. That's how he communicates, through song. You have to remember to sing, friends. And I mean that not only literally but metaphorically. If you are so focused on the negativity and the burden that you're carrying and that we carry for each other, and you don't remember why you are carrying that burden, you will run out of steam. You'll run out of energy, and you won't be able to complete your task. So you have to have balance within that. So I think the Raven teaches us that. And with that, I will wrap it up for the day. So I appreciate all of you. And thank you so much for the birthday wishes here. KP says the I Ching is always spot on. It's uncanny. I love that oracle. It's so to the point. It's really good stuff. And thank you for the support, friends. KP says thank you for being so open and real. I try. I try to stay composed. I have a lot of strong feelings, and I try to stay calm, but sometimes the emotions just pour over, and that's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable and to feel our deep feelings. I think we should. So thank you so much, friends, and have a great Cancer new moon today. And yeah, just appreciate you as a group, and let's continue to have these discussions. Let's just continue to group mind this thing, and we'll figure it out. Just one day at a time, right? Try to stay in the moment if you can, and it really helps to be kind. Even when people are pushing your buttons and when society's pushing your buttons and you feel overwhelmed, kindness is the way to go. And be kind to yourself too. Try not to beat yourself up too much about what you have or have not done, especially if you're atoning for past mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, and it's good to be able to admit that and to make changes, but you don't have to eviscerate yourself. You need to love yourself. And when you can love yourself, that'll allow you to love others. All right, friends. That's what I've got. Take care, my friends. And we'll see you next week for full moon. We'll talk about the full moon in Capricorn. So have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.